Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Georgia Bulldogs and how they match up with our Tennessee Volunteers. I know that it's early, but there's too many people that are too concerned about us losing to Georgia down in Athens. And I think a whole lot of that is based off of previous seasons with the Georgia Bulldogs. This is a totally different team for Georgia and for Tennessee and for everybody else. So you have to know the team that you're going to be facing up against this season. And we're going to go through, as y'all can see, starting off with the schedule and just kind of go through all that. We're going to break everything down. I'm going to tell Tennessee fans why this is a very winnable game for our Volunteers. So starting off with this schedule, okay, it is ranked as the #1 strength of schedule in the entire country. We're going to go through and see how true that actually is. Is this really a gauntlet that Georgia has been playing? So up the top, they played up against Clemson, first game of the season. The only top 30 team that Clemson has played all season was Georgia. And as y'all can see, they lost. Now, they did go into halftime, I think, only down by maybe 3 points, maybe it was 6 points, whatever it was. The game was very close for 30 minutes. But then in the final 30 minutes, Georgia does pull away. But I still don't think that Clemson is nearly as good as they're ranked, okay? They're in the top 15. They're actually in the top 12. And the reason for that is we all know there's a whole lot of media bias. So understanding that they had the 75th ranked strength of schedule, I'm talking about Clemson right now. Understanding that they haven't played up against anybody besides Georgia all season, take that for what it's worth. But them being ranked as high as they are is helping Georgia's strength of schedule out. Next game was Tennessee Tech. No need to even talk about that. We know what that is. But then we've got Kentucky, Auburn, and Mississippi State. Those are the three worst teams in the SEC. What happened versus Kentucky? Well, Georgia only wins that game by 1 point. Okay. And really, Kentucky should have won that game. What about versus Auburn? Georgia actually looked pretty good right there. They win by 18 points. That game was at home. But what about Mississippi State? That is the worst team in the SEC. All right, let me just try to rattle off some of these teams' records for you if you don't believe me. Kentucky right now is 3-5, 1-5 in the SEC. Auburn is 3-5, 1-4 in the SEC. And Mississippi State is 1-7, 0-5 in the SEC. That game was played in Athens, and Georgia only beat them by 10 points. That game was very, very close. There were several times that Mississippi State could have won that game. Again, it's in Athens. So take all that for what it's worth. Now let's come on back to Alabama. I don't remember what Alabama or Georgia was ranked heading into this game, but I know it was like a top 5 matchup. We all understand that. We know that Kirby Smart was literally shaking in his boots before this game because he's terrified of Alabama. He's terrified of playing up against teams that play physical, that play with a pulse. And of course, Alabama comes out in that first half and they dominate Georgia. But then in the second half, I don't know exactly what happened. Yeah, Georgia looked good. They just completely and totally abandoned their running game. They started to go to hurry up, all that type of stuff. And we all know, okay, because Tennessee did beat Alabama, lest we do forget, right? I mean, we saw how nonchalant sort of, reactions we have from their defense. Their defense ain't all that. So seeing Georgia doing that versus their defense, yeah, that is impressive. But ultimately, it wasn't enough for them to even win. Now let's come on back down to Texas, right? So I think Texas might have been ranked #1, and Georgia goes to Austin, and they win that game 30-15. So things were a little bit weird in that game. Obviously, Ewers didn't, have his best game, but I'm going to give credit where it's due. Georgia showed up, and they had a really nice game plan to stop what Texas does. So that's great. But Texas is another team that their strength of schedule has been very, very weak. Yeah, they went to Ann Arbor and they beat Michigan. We see what Michigan is this season. They're not, some world-breaking team or nothing like that. So really, Texas hasn't played up against anybody. They kind of struggled versus Vanderbilt. Yeah, Alabama lost to Vandy. It's not the same old Vandy, but that's not a juggernaut Texas team. That's not the #1 team in the country like everyone thought that they were. And, their strength of schedule is actually 45th right now in the country. That is the worst strength of schedule in the SEC. So understanding all that part of it, right? Do you really think that that's a gauntlet that Georgia's gone through? No, it's just a bunch of really overrated teams that Georgia's been getting a whole lot of credit for, beating or losing in some close, finishes with, things like that. I am not impressed with Georgia just from watching them on film, but hopefully that kind of sheds some light on that part of it. But also looking at the rest of their schedule, they've got Florida coming up this week. Then they have to go to Ole Miss. Okay. Then they get to host our Tennessee Volunteers. And our schedule, on the flip side of it, we've got a banged up Kentucky team that we're going to, I'm sure blow out. Then we've got a really bad Mississippi State team. So we've got a much easier, path before we have to go down to Athens than Georgia does. They're probably going to be a little bit more beat up than we will be heading into that game. So all those things as Tennessee fans should give you a whole lot of confidence. But let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into some of the stat matchups. Let's start off with Tennessee's offense versus Georgia's defense, because when people think about Georgia, the first thing that they're thinking about is this elite defense. But this ain't 2021, it ain't 2022, it ain't even 2023. This defense is taking several steps backwards. So let's look at these numbers, starting off with the rushing. Tennessee's rushing offense is ranked number 7 in the country, and Georgia's rush defense is ranked number 22. Tennessee can run the football on Georgia. I know that numbers are just numbers. Stats don't always tell the whole tale, but if you actually cut on that tape, you can see why Georgia is struggling to stop the run. Their linebackers play all over the place. They're missing their run fits. The guys up front are not as disruptive as they have been in years past. The safeties and all the secondary players, they're not getting to their run fits well either. Again, they just kind of play all over the doggone place. Tennessee can run the football on Georgia. I don't care if the game is played in Athens, if it's in Knoxville, if it's on Mars, if it's in a parking lot down the street somewhere, right? We can run the football, and I think that that's a huge part of this matchup. I mean, it's always a big part of any big-time matchup to be able to establish that running game, something that Tennessee can do, and I think that we'll be able to find success predicated off of that. Now, let's talk about these passing numbers. Tennessee's passing offense is ranked number 62 in the country. We all know that we have to pick that up. Georgia's passing defense is ranked number 38, but that's still kind of a step back from where Georgia was before, just with their pass defense. And we're going to go through and talk about their secondary players and how they match up versus Tennessee secondary players so that y'all can see things for what they actually are. But yeah, I think that Tennessee will get our passing game going. That's not really wishful thinking. It's just understanding that that's what this offense does. We create one-on-one mismatches. And whenever we get those mismatches, all we got to do is pretty much hit that layup down the field. And we're getting closer and closer to it. It will come. It's all about Nico and getting more comfortable, just kind of being who he is. You know what I'm saying? Like not over processing, not overthinking. And he's going to be very excited to go down to Athens. He's talked about that. Pretty much everyone on our team has been talking about this one. So we're looking forward to it. I think the passing game will pick up. But let's talk about just the total offense versus total defense. Tennessee is ranked the number 8 total offense in the entire country. So from top to bottom, it looks like we're better than Georgia, who's ranked number 20. Okay, top to bottom. This is just all about yards and things like that. But yeah, I think that we will be able to move the ball successfully on Georgia's defense. Now let's talk about these scoring numbers. Both teams are ranked at number 13. The thing about this is whenever Tennessee's deep passing game starts to pick up, those, that 39.6 points per game, that's going to go up. So we're still doing a really nice job, almost averaging, 40 points per game. I think that Tennessee could get very close to 50 once things kind of start to pick up from that perspective. Now, I know that that might sound crazy, but keep in mind what Tennessee has been doing. I think maybe really on the back half of this season, Tennessee could end up averaging somewhere around, I'd say about 45 points per game, even with a much tougher schedule at this point. Now, let's go ahead and flip the page here, and let's talk about Georgia's offense versus Tennessee's defense, because I know this is another place that people are very concerned about. And we're going to start off at the top with the rushing numbers. As y'all can see, Georgia's running offense is not that good. They're ranked number 95 in the country. That's actually horrible, only averaging 130 yards per game. Tennessee's rush defense, on the other hand, is ranked number 2 in the country. So Tennessee can and will stop Georgia from running the football. I don't care where it's at, if it's in Athens, if it's in Knoxville, wherever. Tennessee will be able to stop it. A big part of the reason I think that Georgia's not doing a great job running that football is because they're not a run first team anymore. I know everyone thinks that that's still who they are, but they are a pass first team. They're passing the football 56% of the time and only running it 44% of the time. That's rare to see, especially with an SEC team, to be pass first. That's really not a good thing, I think, for Georgia moving forward. They're going to have to find a way to really establish that running game if they want to go on to the college football playoffs or to win a national title. But I don't think that Tennessee is going to have any trouble slowing down what Georgia likes to do on the ground. Now, let's talk about Georgia's passing numbers. They're ranked number 13 in the country in passing yards. So they're doing a really nice job there. Tennessee's passing defense, it's not that far off. We're ranked number 22. Now, there's a couple of reasons for Georgia's success passing the football. Number one, it looks like the offensive line is doing a great job of protecting Carson Beck. But really, teams are playing a whole lot more drop 8 coverage. They're not blitzing a whole lot. We'll take a look at those numbers here in just a second. But also, if you come on down to the scoring numbers and things like that, or, just like to the total offense, what you're going to notice is things kind of start to fall off. And the reason for that is because they're not scoring as much. They're not scoring as frequently because of all these turnovers. Look at the touchdown to interception ratio, 15 touchdowns to 8 picks. And then there's still 5 picks kind of floating out there that people drop. So Carson Beck is throwing the football directly to the other team on a very consistent basis. I think that we can be opportunistic versus this offense. So I'm just very excited about this matchup. But let's come on down to the total offense versus total defense. Georgia's total offense is ranked number 41. Tennessee's total defense is ranked number 3. Georgia's scoring offense is ranked number 33 with 33 points per game. No, that is not a typo. That's actually what it is. And Tennessee's scoring defense is ranked number 3, only allowing about 11.5 points per game. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into these numbers because I'm sure that y'all can tell that Georgia's offense, Georgia's defense, all that type of stuff, it ain't the same as what it used to be. They're not as dominant as people thought that they would be this season. This passing chart right here from Carson Beck, which is what y'all looking at, this really tells the whole tale. He and I have tried to tell y'all over the past couple of seasons, if you want to slow down Georgia's offense, if you want to make them look very average, just clog up the middle of the field. Make them throw the ball outside because that's not what they want to do. They want to hit these easy passes across the middle. Look at all those interceptions that Carson Beck has thrown, trying to target the middle. That's because teams are starting to take that away from them. And, they're forcing him to make some of these more difficult passes outside of the numbers. Now he just looks like a very average quarterback, which we've been telling y'all for the longest. That's really who he is. Now, down here, what we're going to be looking at is the passing pressure, okay? And we're going to see that Georgia has been blitzed about 30% of the time this season, but they haven't faced the blitz 70% of the time. And 18.3% of the time, they're only seeing a 3-man rush, which means the teams are dropping 8. They're playing coverage, right? Max coverage. And they don't care about getting the pass rush because they know that, hey, Georgia can't run the football well. Let's make Carson Beck have to throw some accurate passes in some very tight windows. And teams have had some success with that. You can also take a look at the numbers from when Carson Beck wasn't blitzed. He's got 11 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Versus when he is blitzed, 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now, every single quarterback, for the most part, I'd say probably about 98% of quarterbacks, their numbers are going to look worse versus the blitz. That's natural. I think that teams might start trying to heat Carson Beck up a little bit more. Start putting some pressure on him because Georgia's offensive line looks really, really good because they're not having to block anybody. No one's even trying to get to Carson Beck. Everyone's trying to play coverage. Now let's take a look at Tennessee's coverage. We're not looking at the grades. We're going to be looking at the reception percentage. And y'all can see right here, Jamal McCoy is only allowing receptions 45.9% of the time. Ricky Gibson only at 55% of the time. Will Brooks, 69.2% of the time. Arion Carter, we're not going to talk about linebackers right now. We're just going to be talking about the secondary players. But Andre Turrentine is at 60%, and Boo Carter is at 65%. Amongst our 5 starters inside of our secondary, Tennessee is only allowing receptions 56% of the time. Now let's take a look at Georgia's secondary in coverage. Malachi Starks is allowing receptions 68.2% of the time. Dalen Everett, 87.5% of the time. We're definitely going to be targeting him. Then we've got Julian Humphrey, 63.6% of the time. KJ Bolden, 64.7% of the time. He's one of their better cover guys. Then we got Dan Jackson, 66.7% of the time as well. So whenever you look at Georgia's 5 starters or the 5 players that play the most in their secondary, they're allowing completion 70% of the time. So what that should tell you, okay, is that Tennessee's secondary is actually better in coverage than Georgia's is. So our guys are going up against better cover players in practice than they're going to see in this game. All right, now let's take a look at the pass rush numbers. This is going to be Georgia's team. And y'all can see all the different. So I'm looking at the pressures, FYI, but y'all can see how the pressures look for all their guys. But the main thing that I want to talk about is down here at the very, very bottom. Look at the total amount of pressures at 119 versus 17 sacks. Now let's see how Tennessee stacks up versus Georgia's pass rush. All right, same thing right here. And this man right here should stand out to you. James Pierce with 31 total pressures on his own. But let's come on down to the bottom and let's see how things stack up. Well, it looks like Tennessee has 136 pressures on the season with 17 sacks. So if you're talking about a pass rush, Tennessee's pass rush is definitely better than Georgia's is. Okay, so I don't want to hear all this stuff about, man, their pass rush is just unbelievable. Their secondary is just really good in coverage. Tennessee can't block them. Tennessee wide receivers can't get open. None of that type of stuff because y'all can see it right here from Pro Football Focus. The numbers don't lie. So hopefully going through all that type of stuff helps y'all to understand how much of a shot Tennessee really has in this game. Georgia might end up losing at least one game before they even get to see us. I don't see that happening to our Tennessee Volunteers, but in matchups like this, the biggest thing is who can run the football, who can stop the run. Tennessee does that a lot better. And then, if you're just talking about coverage and things like that, we're seeing that Tennessee's cover guys are better than Georgia's are. And then our pass rush is better than Georgia's is. Our linebackers are going to play, I think, just as well as Georgia's linebackers do, especially with the way that they've been playing so far this season. Georgia's linebackers are all over the place. Tennessee will find a lot of success versus this Georgia team. It's just all going to be about coming down to Athens, playing with confidence. And like we touched on, man, the whole team is fired up and ready to go. So don't keep on asking, what is Tennessee going to do if we go 10-2? Because we are expecting to go undefeated for the rest of this season and win the whole doggone thing. I'm going to tell you right here, right now, if that passing game picks up, this right here, our Tennessee Volunteers is the best team in the entire country. And I don't think that it's even close. But that's it for my thoughts. Please let me know yours down in the comment section. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.